Good evening, family and friends. What's going on? Hey, we're here in the Martin household and we are just getting ready for our evening. So I thought I'd jump on really quick. We are finishing up chapter 3 and we only have like 5 pages. So 5 pages, we're going to make it quick, jump out. So this is going to be a quick reading, y'all. I hope everybody's doing well. Impeachment was officially announced today, and it was abuse of power, obstruction of Congress. You should check it out, look into it, do your research, know what it is that's going on around you. If you have questions, reach out, ask. It's a historical time, and it's good to be informed. So let's jump right in. Here we go. This is chapter 3 and kind of the part 2 of chapter 3. So the final section of chapter 3. Trading away principles. The president's biggest abdication of conservative policies is in the realm of economics. Republicans have long stood for free trade, believing the open exchange of goods is a fundamental right. The United States is more prosperous than any nation in history because of it. However, Donald Trump is a dogged protectionist. He has created new barriers to trade, justified by an inverted view of economics that has been discredited for hundreds of years. Fundamentally, Trump does not understand how trade works. Now, you remember the executive branch, he didn't understand how the executive branch works. They're also saying, like, he doesn't get how foreign trade integrates with American trade and what that looks like. When experts try to explain it to him, he either half listens or only hears what he wants to hear. What he wants to hear, of course, is that his trade wars with other countries are a brilliant move and a big success. His favorite weapon in these economic conflicts is the tariff. The president believes adding fees to incoming foreign goods will bring in far more wealth to our country. We've endured years of him spewing this false notion. Many experts know this is crazy. Why would a president deny Americans the opportunity to pay less for their products? Why would he purposely make the goods they buy more expensive? As one economist explained, it should be in the public interest in every country to let the people buy whatever they want from those who sell it cheapest. The proposition is so very manifest that it seems ridiculous to take any pains to prove it. So basically, this expert's like, this is on its face, says what it says. There's really no reason to have to show that we should allow people to pay the cheapest that they can for the goods that they want to get if the countries are going to sell it to us cheap. This wasn't a recent observation. It was the father of capitalism, Adam Smith, writing in the 1700s. His point is more relevant than ever. To understand how far off the reservation the president has gone, you have to look at the world through his soda straw. Trump believes placing a tariff or tax on incoming goods will make us rich. Let's say he imposed a 20% tariff on sweaters from India. In Trump's mind, that means for every $30 sweater shipped from India, we will collect $6 in fees, meaning the Indians basically would be paying us to buy their sweaters. Sounds good, right? It gets better. With the resulting higher prices of sweater, U.S. companies can afford to get back into the sweater business, and they start competing with India because the fee only applies to foreign products. So they can sell them at a slightly lower cost to Americans. The result is new jobs in the U.S. sweater industry. Win-win for America. Not so fast. This infantile logic has been repeated for ages, despite Adam Smith's timeless words. Here is what really happens. As soon as the tariff is placed on sweaters, the extra cost will be passed to consumers. The Indians won't pay the $6. Americans will pay the $6. Now, that makes sense. If you run a business and someone hits you with a tax, your price is going up. Not you are going to pay more. Your consumer's price is going up. Those same Americans will be forced to spend more money on clothing than they did before. Multiply that across the country, and that's billions and billions of dollars extra they will have to spend on sweaters and less on other products they need. So it affects the GDP, right? Because if we're spending more on these stinking sweaters, we don't have as much to spend on other things. Sure, some U.S. companies will be incentivized to start making sweaters, creating low-paying jobs, but what will go unnoticed is the impact everywhere else. The billions of dollars other companies will lose because Americans are spending it on something they shouldn't be. Better paying jobs will disappear elsewhere. The economics are painfully obvious. Tariffs don't work. They are just a massive tax on Americans, robbing them of their hard-earned money. Regrettably, no living human has been able to help the president see this reality. Believe me, many among us have tried. His convoluted view of economics is beyond repair. The debate has created schisms within the team. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin has fought behind closed doors for a level-headed approach to tariffs. He has recommended against some of the arbitrary and sudden moves made by the president. Mnuchin has also repeatedly attempted to ease panic in private industry by downplaying the trade wars, only to be rebuked by advisors at the White House for supposedly speaking out of turn. Folks such as Peter Navarro have seen their stock with Trump rise for cheerleading his actions, although they still privately admit frustration because there's no telling whether he'll change his mind at any given moment and raise fees further without a plan. As with any other issue, the reasonable voices are being sidelined. Conservatives must admit this is a backdoor big government. Trump helped push a major tax cut bill through Congress in 2017, but the consequences of his tariffs will cost the American people more than the money they saved from the legislation, according to estimates. This is a sneaky and contemptible way for the president to raise taxes without people realizing it. Trump knows this is the case. He's already talked with aides about how he'll spend the extra money from his tariff taxes. In a news conference, he also threw around the possibility that some of it might be spent on disaster response. Tomorrow, it might be in addition to the White House or extra border wall. Who knows? I am not making the argument that there are no circumstances which warrant limitations on or the cessation of trade with foreign countries. Throughout our history, there have been points in which we've decided it's not in America's interest to trade with certain nations, particularly when we are engaged in armed conflict against an aggressor. I've argued to fellow Trump administrational officials that governments such as China do not deserve to have access to certain U.S. goods, which could allow them to spy on their people or gain a competitive military edge. But we must also recognize that free trade is one of our most potent weapons to lift people out of poverty and empower them to take control over their destinies, rather than allowing autocrats to dictate their future. The larger concern here at home is that as he ratchets up his trade wars, the president could trigger a recession and wreck the economy. Deep inside, he must share this concern. It's probably one of the reasons he lashes out at agency heads and advisors who have warned him about the consequences of high tariffs. So the people inside are telling him this. So he's aware of it. So when it happens and it's all on the news and then he pretends it's not existing and then his people back him up, behind closed doors, they're telling him this is a bad idea. In the meantime, Trump is acting like a dictator. At one point, he tweeted, "Our great American companies are hereby ordered to immediately start looking for an alternative to China." That's not how a democratic system works, Mr. President. You can't order American companies where to make their products. The markets have been spooked by his increasingly unhinged behavior on the matter, and top CEOs have warned the president he needs to reverse course. It might be too late. Trump's anti-trade actions are hurting Americans at this very moment. Estimates show the economy has already lost hundreds of thousands of jobs because of his trade war. If Trump continues down this path, the prices on everything from phones to furniture will go up further. Every industry will ultimately be impacted by the ripple effects. Farmers, manufacturers, you name it. Other countries are retaliating already with their own tariffs, which magnifies the problem, right? Because if we do it to them, what's going to happen? They're going to turn around and do it to us, right? Because this is how it goes. You want to play like that? We're going to play like this. And meanwhile, everybody's just paying more, and the governments are potentially collecting more tariffs without strategically thinking long term, right? Because he's not thinking long term because he doesn't care. So other countries are retaliating already. Working class, poor Americans will be hit hardest. They're the ones who rely on low prices to run households, where there is little margin for financial error, right? Because it's going to slowly creep up, right? It's not going to spike. It's going to slowly creep up. Who gets affected by that? The people at the bottom, right? The people at the top, the rich people, they don't care if bread goes from $3.50 to $5.50, right? Because they're going to pay the margin. They don't care anyways. It's those of us who are right on the cusp, right? Those of us who are budgeting. That's who it's going to affect. If Trump continues to live in an economic twilight zone, these people will be forced to work longer hours and extra jobs just to make ends meet. And I'll tell you who's not going to be working extra hours and long jobs: Trump himself, right? Because he's never had to work a job. Trade should not be used as a weapon of war in times of peace. It's a war that everyone loses. It's time for the GOP to see the light. Now, this is someone from the GOP telling the Republicans. Remember, he said chapter 3 was for the Republicans on this. The president's economic policies are bad for Americans, contrary to conservative principles and cruel, not unlike their architect. So he's throwing shade again. Party's over. This is the next section. After Mitt Romney's failure to unseat President Obama in 2012, the Republican Party had a come-to-Jesus moment. How could we have lost the election? It seems so obvious to the GOP leadership that Barack Obama was out of touch with mainstream America. In their eyes, the election should have been a cakewalk. But Romney got walloped 332 to 206 in the Electoral College. It was clear that the Republicans were the ones who were out of touch. Those who know Mitt believed he would have been a capable leader. But he was also unable to connect with the broader swath of the electorate that he needed. The Republican National Committee commissioned an election autopsy report. That means they looked into it to figure out what's really going on here and why did this whole thing die as they looked at it. The results were stark. Released 4 months after voting day, the 100-page document highlighted the party's problems with minorities, women, young people. It said conservative policies had strong foundations but needed to be recast for new audience, basically rebranded, right? So they're trying to say, listen, they're not buying what you're selling, so you need to rebrand it, even if it's make up something else and put it in a different package so that you can shove it down these people's throats. Republicans should bring more people under the tent, the authors wrote, but instead they were ostracizing them. Quote, young voters are increasingly rolling their eyes at what the party represents, and many minorities wrongly think that Republicans do not like them or want them in the country, the document declared. Quote, if Hispanic Americans hear that the GOP doesn't want them in the United States, they won't pay attention to our next sentence, unquote. Now stop for a moment. This was a report that the GOP sanctioned to look into what their problem was in 2012, 2013, right? And think about this. They already knew that if you speak harshly toward groups of people, what's going to happen? They're not going to like you and they're not going to vote for you. So you would think that that would give them some sort of wisdom, like, you know what? That's not who we are, right? If we sound racist, if we sound like we support systemic and institutionalized racism, it's not going to be a good look. That report was telling them that. And do you think that that changed their position or what they began spouting out of their mouth? It didn't, clearly, because look where we are. But what's funny is they cannot say that they didn't know. They told them, right? So if minorities wrongly think the Republicans do not like them, they will stop listening. The findings were released at a press conference by RNC chairman Reince Priebus. 3 years later, Reince, of course, would become Trump's first White House chief of staff, the first. And at the top, it says the report urged Republicans to focus on broadening the base of the party, especially being more inclusive of Hispanic, Black, Asian, and gay Americans. So they've been aware of this gap, right? In marketing worlds, it's called, where's the white space? Where's the gap? And so the problem is they told them, like, listen, you all are not doing anything to showing these people that, hey, maybe you are something that can be offered to them, right? They haven't went for that at all. If you've been at least half conscious during the Trump presidency, you probably know the president has followed virtually none of this advice. In fact, it seems as if he's deliberately written a counter playbook, flagrantly dismissing the RNC's recommendations and alienating the populations the GOP needs to reach, right? They know this. On Donald Trump's watch, the party has become less fiscally conservative, more divisive, less diverse, more anti-immigrant, and less relevant. In the meantime, he has saddled the Republican brand with uniquely nauseous baggage, leaving others to manage a big tent party that will eventually have few people left under its canopy. And that's the truth. How did this happen, you ask? Well, if there's a theme to Trump's life in politics, business, or family, it's that he's disloyal. Republicans gave the keys to the kingdom to a man who paid hush money to shut up a porn star he'd been sleeping with while married to his third wife, who'd recently given birth to their son. He said it. Are we surprised he's run afoul of the party's most cherished ideals? If elected to a second term, he will cheat on naive Republicans over and over again. And basically he's saying, like, you don't have to look far for the evidence. He's not loyal. When asked about whether he might end the disaster of tariffs to which he has wedded himself, the president unintentionally summed up his entire political philosophy. Quote, yeah, sure, why not? Might as well. I have second thoughts about everything. Could it get more ironic than that? It did, when Trump backtracked on the comment itself. Conservatives dreaming that Donald Trump is our savior need to wake up. Not only is he not a conservative, he represents a long-term threat to the Republican Party and what it purports to stand for. He is redefining us to a degree that makes our platform incoherent. Those cheering him onto a second term with foaming at the mouth excitement that he is totally owning the left are unknowingly nailing coffins into the GOP, cementing an end to the party as we know it and taking us into inhospitable territory, right? He's saying long term, y'all playing this game, it is not going to play well for the Republican Party and those values and what it was founded on. Let me put a finger point on it. If Republicans believe the president's handling of their core issues is acceptable, then there is nothing left of the party but its name. And that's the truth. If you think all this represents, there is nothing left but its name. Yes, there are still Lone Ranger conservatives trying to advance traditional GOP causes from inside the administration, but Trump's leadership of the party, or lack thereof, will be what's remembered, not the cleanup job of his lieutenants. The president's betrayal of the conservative faith may not be problematic for some reading this book. You might be comfortable with larger bureaucracies, debt spending, or protectionist economics. That's your prerogative. But the president has transformed the long arm of government into a wrecking ball to go after something else, much more fundamental than the GOP agenda. Every American, regardless of political affiliation, should pay attention. So he's saying not only is he coming through smashing up whatever the Republican Party thought that they stood for, he's coming for something even bigger. And he's saying everyone needs to wake up and pay attention, right? And this is, again, this is about long-term stability for our nation, for who we are as Americans, for what we represent to the world, leadership. What do we mean, and the stance and the positions we want to take that will ultimately affect bigger pictures and global discussions, right? So anyway, that's the end of chapter 3, y'all. Lots going on. Stay warm, stay on top of things, sending love and peace to everybody. Let's do our due diligence. I'm here, your word warrior, getting it in, sending love and peace. Y'all, I'm out. Take care. We'll be back a couple days for chapter 4. Take care. Bye.